Okay, there we go. So we are now live streaming and set up for our recording. I want to just do a quick check-in before we jump in to see that we have quorum, because we have non-members joining us who are former members now, but aren't officially members of ATC as of the new year. So let's see. Still have 1, 2, 3,
Andrea,
4, 5. Is my count right? We have 5.
yeah, I think Mary and Julie are both coming, so I think we
Okay.
should.
Okay, great. And I did hear from Papa that he wasn't going to be able to make this meeting. So I do know, there we go. So with Julie, we now have quorum for adopting notes and any other pieces, so we can go ahead and jump in. So before we do, I will read a little introductory remarks, and then let me actually make sure that my YouTube piece is closed down so that doesn't affect my audio. And then I'll read our introductory pieces and then hand it over to our new chairs. So good evening, everyone. My name is Shane Rhodes, and I am the City of Eugene staff representative for this meeting. Before the chairs convene the meeting, I have a few reminders and introductory words. The purpose of the Active Transportation Committee is to advise the City of Eugene staff and community organizations and partners on the implementation of Eugene's pedestrian and bicycle strategic plan, to provide feedback to staff on projects relating to walking and bicycling. And Eugene City staff will consider recommendations from ATC along with input from other members of the public during decision-making processes. Please keep in mind that this meeting is being both recorded and live streamed to YouTube, meaning that it can be viewed on the City of Eugene Transportation Planning YouTube channel, both right now and in the future. The live transcription feature for closed captioning should be enabled, and all verbal and written commentary will be held in the public record. Today's meeting will begin with a 10-minute public comment period. The public comment period is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the Active Transportation Committee on transportation-related issues. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. To indicate you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature within Zoom now. The chairs will call on you when it is your turn, and staff will unmute your microphone at that time. When it is your time to speak, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward or neighborhood if you know it. At any time during the meeting, you are welcome to ask a question using the chat function, or use the chat feature for discussion with other attendees and committee members. Comments will be monitored and recorded. Anyone making inappropriate comments will be restricted from the live portion of the meeting. Questions will be answered at the chair's discretion. As a reminder, civil speech supports everyone in feeling comfortable sharing their perspectives and opinions. So let's give one another the respect of courteous and civil speech tonight. And with that, I'll hand it over to the chairs to convene the meeting.
Okay, well, welcome to the January 13th meeting of the ATC. As will become painfully obvious, I have never chaired a meeting on Zoom before, so we'll see how it goes. So Shane, our first item is public comment, and I'm supposed to in some way know if somebody has signed up for public comment, but I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like we have only one hand up for speakers from the attendees, and that is Vicky, so I will unmute her now.
Hi, and Happy New Year. Thanks for taking my comments. My name is Vicky Mello, and I live in Ward 4 in Eugene. And I am still concerned with electronic micromobility devices that are zooming around in Eugene. And I guess I haven't seen much in the change of behavior or any too many notifications on advertisement or anything to try and get people to go slow and alert walkers and those people moving slower on the paths that they're zooming by. And so I am still concerned, and I So I just want to bring it up, and I'm wondering if there's any further things that have been done to contact the e-bike shops in town, or those that sell scooters or anything like that. If there's some way that we could figure out a way of enforcing or letting everybody know these are shared paths, and we should all be working together. So that's thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. That's our only public comment person. Is that true, Shane?
Yep, that's all that we have with hands raised.
Okay, and so we have a few minutes. Is there any feedback? Is there anything actively going on to try to control speed?
Yeah, as you know, I've talked about in previous ATC meetings, we did do a path etiquette. It was sort of our first phase of a path etiquette campaign this summer, where we did several outreach events along the path. We did signage and social media outreach. We definitely recognize that it's just the beginning, and that there's a lot more education pieces that have to happen. And we are making plans for the next phase for this coming spring and summer, especially since we are going to be seeing more e-scooters. I think just general public use, but also the potential of shared e-scooters coming to town. We also are still planning an e-bike expo. We had planned an e-bike expo and had built some really good relationships with e-bike shops, and we're excited to get them together, and we've started that communication with them and have good communication happening. And so we're definitely utilizing that as a way to make sure that the right information is going out to people, that they're getting information to people about proper ways to use e-bikes on paths and in our shared environment. And also, we want to make sure that they're selling e-bikes that are actually allowed on our paths, and if they're not, that they're clearly communicating which ones aren't allowed on our path network or require maybe even special licensing if they're high-powered electric mopeds and not bikes. And so as part of our phase 2, we're definitely looking at more direct education and even enforcement going into next year. And so I can give an update on that later, sort of late winter, early spring, as that forms up a little bit more of what that's going to look like.
Okay. Andrea, do you have something to add?
Yeah, no, I just wanted clarification too. She said micro mobility devices. So I was kind of curious. That sounded not quite like e-bikes to me, but I was wondering also, Vicky, is it about the paths? Have you also seen bad behavior in terms of sidewalks and bike lanes? That was kind of my thoughts on I was just kind of curious what specifically were the problems that you've noticed the most.
If you can put that in the chat, that'd be great. And I'll answer the question that Andrew asked about are class 3 e-bikes not allowed or not allowed to be operated at the speeds they are capable of? For instance, if e-assists are off, are they still not allowed? So a class 3 e-bike is not allowed on our path if they're using the e-assist. If it is a class 3 that isn't using power at all, then that's a pedal bike, and they are allowed, but they can't be using any power at all. If they're using any amount of power, no matter what it is, if it's a class 3 e-bike, it's not allowed, because class 3 e-bikes have the capacity to travel over 20 miles an hour. And so class 2 can only travel up to 20 miles an hour. So if you have an e-bike that travels with the e-assist doesn't kick off at 20, the e-assist continues above 20, that is now no longer a class 2 e-bike and is not allowed on our paths.
Good luck enforcing that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess, Vicky, if you're able to respond to Andrea's question in the chat, that would be, I guess, the way we're supposed to do this. So we don't have any more public comments. Is that true, Shane?
That's right. Yeah, I can. And if that doesn't work for her, I can. Yeah. So she says hoverboards and large tire bikes have been experienced on sidewalks, bike paths, and in town, usually with no alerting. Yeah, I think that's the other piece that we definitely saw in our path etiquette piece. It wasn't always just the speeds, but also, and we heard this from e-bikes as well as regular people on bikes and other devices, that it's that scaring people. And so it's one of our key messages was give a warning as you pass. So, use your bell, or give an audible warning of passing on your left. I think this, it's not only the speeds, but just coming up and surprising people was a big piece of that safety piece that we heard.
Okay, an ongoing work in progress. Okay, so moving on, the next item on the agenda is the approving the summary notes of the December 9th meeting. Does anybody have any questions, edits, or I'll entertain a movement to approve them if, a motion to approve them if there are no changes.
I'll move to approve them if there's no comment.
Okay, Julie moves to approve. Any seconds? Somebody second. Mary
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, I think Mary beat you to it. Okay, Mary seconds. All those in favor, leave, what do we do? Leave, thumbs up? And it's hard to tell who's who's a current member, who's a former member. But I think that's unanimous, except Andrew, are you?
I am abstaining because I was not present, but it is accurate that I wasn't present. So that's all I can comment on about the notes.
Okay, all righty. So they are approved. Moving on, our next item is the member reflections and gratitudes, and we've got actually up to a half hour for this. There are, what, how many? Pete, Steve, Grace, Daniel. Is it, so I don't know if you each want to speak for a few minutes and then you could bounce ideas off of each other's, or I don't know how you want to do this, but we've got a chunk of time, and we'd like to hear what you have to say about how things went on the ATC, what might be improved, any reflections you have. So who wants to go first? Steve, you want to go first? I can tell.
Okay. Thanks. Well, yeah, with all this snow time and quiet time in the last few weeks, I had some time to reflect on this, and I thought, how should I frame this? What I came down to is, if I could speak to myself when I was first beginning my tenure on the ATC, what would I now tell myself that I wish I knew then? And it's really just a couple of things. First is really study the transportation system plan. I read it, I printed it out, made a beautiful binder. I did go through it, but I can't say I came back to it in the depth and the extent that I should have over the 2 years. It's really it's the roadmap for success for all of our goals. And, as such, ATC should be very engaged in advising any needed refinements or priorities and metrics. And with regard to metrics, there are evaluation criteria in the TSP that I think ought to be used to gauge progress. For instance, in the climate and energy category, there are 2 criteria: reduce vehicle miles per traveled per capita by 10% by 2020, and also reduce greenhouse gas emissions 10% below 1990 levels by 2020. Have we done it? I doubt that anybody could really say whether we have or not. I even doubt that there's widespread consensus on how to measure those things. So if I was advising myself now, it would become a bigger pest about applying those metrics to project prioritization, because they're very important metrics. And really, it's the Rosetta Stone to figure out what we should be spending money on and what we shouldn't. The other thing is, I would say give more emphasis to engaging the broader public on the goals and the successes related to TSP, because I see a lot of evidence on social media that people in the broader community just don't get it. They don't know what the drainage, what the pedestrian bump outs are for. They don't know why the cycle tracks, why the rain gardens, things like that. They just don't understand. It's not that the city staff doesn't do a great job of communicating these things. It's just those communications don't get out very broadly. So I would say it'd be really great for the program or maybe communications committee to really give some thought on how to really widely broadcast and communicate the goals and get more of the public on board to understand, because otherwise they're not going to be supportive. And then the last thing would be, I'd tell myself, find more opportunities to collaborate with the Springfield BPAC. There were some, but we share the same goals and a lot of the same challenges, and the public largely uses the same infrastructure across the city without recognizing the city boundaries so much. There's even though we have the same challenges, there's strength in numbers. So I'd say, work more with BPAC. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. Who wants to go next?
I can hop in, although I won't be nearly quite as thoughtful as Steve was, but I have some things that I want to reflect on that I've really appreciated, and then some ideas for growth that I wrote down, I think about a year ago and didn't fully implement. So I think for me, getting on this committee was not at all what I was expecting when I signed up in January 2020. Of course, we had COVID, and that majorly disrupted our work and time together, as well as what was happening in the transportation sphere. It's been really interesting to be a part of the group and see how those COVID impacts have shaped kind of our worlds and what has and hasn't been happening. So I've been glad to have that constant thread throughout this very strange time, but it's definitely not what I thought I was getting into. That being said, I think it was a really great learning experience to see kind of how we all adapt and pivot and what we can make with the situations that are at hand. And it was really fun and enjoyable to get some practice facilitating public meetings. Thanks for bearing with me and Daniel last year through that. I really enjoyed some of the events and special projects that we got to participate in and be part of. The most recent one I went to was the parking day that other folks on this committee put on, and that was incredible and really great to see. I wish there were more opportunities for that, but hopefully moving forward, that will happen again. And this year in particular, I was really grateful to have such a highly engaged group. You all were so passionate about the topic, despite being completely remote and virtual. So it was great to see how connected and fired up everybody was. In terms of ideas for growth, I've had it on my list to try and think about this work plan topic for quite some time. So I'm really thrilled that that's happening this year. And I hope that that's a useful tool for you all moving forward. I think also something that the committee has been doing a lot more of is communicating with external groups and with boards and committees and councils. And I think I had written down the note to try and do either annual or semi-annual reports to City Council talking about what the committee is up to. So just to continue to encourage you all to make those connections and spread your good work far and wide. Maybe a slight reminder or just an idea to think a little bit more about walking, as it is the active transportation committee and can skew very heavily towards biking. And then also just to think about this term active and what does that really look like? How can committee members be more active outside of just these meetings? And I know COVID has made that extra hard, but thinking about other ways to get involved with our neighborhoods or people in our communities and bring them into the loop a little bit more. And then finally, I wish that we had gotten to do more tactical urbanism. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I encourage you all to explore that moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'd love for all that to happen. Those are good things to put onto our plan for the coming year. Who's next? Daniel, you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, I'm really grateful to city staff and the committee for helping me kind of get a solid foot in the Eugene AT community. I'm really excited to work with all of you again in the future in other capacities. Yeah, about the ATC, some things that I sort of was working through for the last 2 years. And so the ATC is ultimately advisory to staff and really no more. And the committee should understand that they're often ultimately kind of preaching to the choir. Instead, I think a better model is to think of the ATC as kind of the hub of a wheel, that, one of those places that can connect different interested parties who come, or just other groups in the community, or people to the correct city staff with, their particular interest or issue, to other community groups that can help to, kind of provide that outlet for them, or just opportunities to exercise their democratic voice to council or to one of the city committees or whatever. I think the communications committee is particularly critical for that piece of it. Just as important as the infrastructure committee, really important to be like, keeping on the ground, and the programs committee. I have a lot of regrets about, not getting to do more work with the programs committee just because the last 2 years. But I'm hoping we'll see more of that soon. So kind of being, doing some chair stuff. I think that members and chairs should be proactively exercising their power to set the agenda for the discussion, and then obviously make use of all the experience that we have in staff. But that, again, like staff only has so much leeway as professionals, but we here can push to fulfill Eugene's like stated goals around things like Vision Zero and climate and mode share. Thanks.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Pete, I think you're the only leaving member that we haven't heard from yet.
Well, thank you, Sue. And this has been a really interesting opportunity for me, and I am kind of disappointed that I'm not continuing on. Actually, it's just that with my new role, they're running into some real time conflicts with it. But the thing I really want to say is that this was an incredibly great opportunity for me to learn. Staff, you guys, Shane and oh God, what was his name? Who helped with it too, we were working with on the infrastructure committee. You guys educated me so much about, just how insanely long time frames we have to deal with as far as transportation projects, and trying to get these nuts and bolts together, where it's like so for example, the 13th Avenue Bikeway that project started 10 years ago. And so it's really kind of prepared me for my next thing. The thing, my big kind of regret as far as where I really wanted to be, one of the reasons I really wanted to be on this committee was that I'm a pedestrian and a bus rider. I don't really ride bikes, and I feel like that I haven't had an opportunity, not necessarily, this isn't necessarily reflective of anybody in particular, but I just haven't felt like I've had the opportunity to really advocate for pedestrian stuff as much as I had kind of hoped. But overall, I think this committee got some really good talent on it, and looking forward, hopefully you guys can start come back to in-person meetings, because I think that's been one of the biggest hindrances in the last couple of years to really being effective as communication between us and staff, and doing that kind of advocacy outside of this committee. And I hope the communication committee can really talk to other stakeholders in the community and make sure that this message of active transportation, whatever that looks like, gets out there. Because I just got an email just right before the meeting on my LTD email from somebody who was advocating cars only for River Road, because they didn't believe in moving some of that stuff forward. So, get that message out there. So, and good luck, guys.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, I think it has become clear to all of us that, pedestrian issues consistently get shortchanged, not only with our committee, in active transportation committees nationwide. That always happens. So it is something that we really need to attend to, and try to make sure everybody gets a voice. We've got a little time left on the agenda. If any of you want to respond to what other people said, or any of the other members want to follow up on what anybody said. Any thoughts? Yeah, Josh?
I just want to say thank you for the people who are departing. I think you guys all added something, and in past years there'd be like a round of applause. But it doesn't quite happen as well online. And people used to get mugs and certificates, so hopefully, Shane, that still happens in some fashion. So anyway, thank you all for especially Grace and Daniel for leading the committee this past year.
Yes, I agree. And particularly, I mean, especially Daniel, I know he was not only chairing these meetings, but then he was chairing both of the two committees that I was on most of the time. So yeah, thanks. We appreciate all of your inputs. Alan, I see your hand.
Yeah, I want to ask Shane or other staff whether or not the TSP is covered as sort of a part of the intro topic to ATC membership. It's been so long since I got my intro. That was before the TSP. So
yes, it is. I am actually going through the what's the word I'm looking for? Orientation slide deck right now, and so I will double check that and make sure that is. And I'll just mention also, well, first of all, a gratitude, but then also that this information that you're sharing here, I will make sure that the new ATC members hear the nuggets of wisdom in that orientation piece as well. And as you know, we did invite them, and I think a couple are on as attendees this evening, and some people who applied. And so we'll send this recording and this information as part of it too. But Alan, if you want to continue on, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. I'm glad that the TSP is part of the orientation, and especially the part about the metrics, I think is really useful information to focus on. I also wanted to thank everyone who has been part of the ATC in the last couple of years, especially in these weird times. And a while back, I had suggested the possibility of former ATC members being consulted related to projects that are in their specific neighborhood, and that kind of got lost a little bit. And so I want to just sort of remind all of us that are continuing on that I think that there are circumstances where we can engage past ATC members and keep that momentum going. There's a lot of benefits for continuing to reconnect with people who used to be regularly contributing.
Good idea. Okay, Mary?
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you for I think 4 people who just shared, and I really appreciate your specific feedback. I think it's really important, and I really appreciate that you took the time to reflect and to share those things. And I think you're going out with a bang and kind of slingshotting us forward as much as we'd like to just keep you here. I think that you did a good job of launching us into the next phase, and we hope you'll come back. And I like Alan's idea of continuing to use their expertise, and I hope you'll come back and visit some. And I do think that we'll see you around because you're all involved, active people, and it'll be nice to cross paths with you. Maybe sometimes in real life, see your faces. So my thanks are added.
Okay, anything else? All righty, well, you 4 officially are liberated from this meeting, although you're more than welcome to hang around and listen. So we won't think less of you if you want to sign out here, but you're welcome to stay on if you want to. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the pavement bond measure, and that's Alan's.
Okay, so at the last ATC meeting, we brought forward the communications subcommittee brought forward a proposal related to the presumed upcoming bond measure that relates to the street right of way. And we didn't really have time to thoroughly discuss the different suggestions on how much funding should go to, we think should go to active transportation. And so just last week, the subcommittee met again to look more closely at that recommendation and revised the proposal. And so that was included in the packet. And so if you have that available, the only changes to the proposal were were towards the bottom. There's a list of 3 items, and only the first one, number 1 and number 2, were changed. And the suggestion or recommendation the subcommittee has is to ask city staff to prepare sort of a financial analysis to determine which of the projects that are in the TSP have been completed and what hasn't been completed, and the current estimated cost of those uncompleted projects, so that we know the total cost of completing the plan, and then divide that by the number of years, which is, I believe, 12 from when the next bond measure would take effect to the time where we're hoping that the mode share will be tripled, which is in 2035. And that product would then be the amount that we think that should be included in the bond measure, so that we know that it'll be complete. So,
Excuse me, Shane or Alan, could either of you do a screen share of the?
Yes, I can
Yep,
do that.
I got it. I had that
Good,
queued
good.
up just in case.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
Do you, it is in different parts, so I don't know if you want to just focus on the numbered parts or.
I think just the numbered parts, unless anyone has questions about the original or comments about the original or the upper portion of the proposal, which is kind of background information. Is there anyone who has any questions about the proposal and that amendment?
Looks like,
Let's see. Josh has your hand up.
Yeah, Alan, the financial analysis you were referring to, is your request that city staff do that in advance of us sending this letter, or part of this letter's request is that they do that analysis and then sort of fill in the number?
Yeah, the latter, that
Okay.
determine the amount that would be appropriated for active transportation, that analysis would be performed.
and just so everyone knows, Rob is watching on YouTube and chimed in to say that we are planning to Rob's going to bring this to ATC, the bond measure information to ATC in February, and that he has the information that Alan is talking about, and that he can bring that in February, or we will have it for that time. So I think it sounds like that request is not sort of out of sync with possibility.
Great.
Okay. Andrew, looks like.
Yeah, I don't want to make this more complicated because I really like the letter, and but my understanding is that the climate friendly and equitable communities rulemaking at the state level may require many cities, potentially including Eugene, to update their TSPs. And I don't think that should stop us from saying, well, if we're going to get a TSP that's better than the one we have, we haven't even completed the one we have, so why don't we just start there? So I like the letter, but I guess I'm wondering, Shane, if you know anything. I'm not so up to date I can offer information. I just know that there is state rulemaking that may encourage cities to do some of the things that we want. So I'm just wondering if that should be part of the conversation, if you guys are going to do that at some point in the near future.
Well, we are, in the beginning phases of doing a TSP refresh. It's not necessarily, it's not a new TSP, and we don't know, because of the rules haven't come down, what requirements they are going to say of, what TSP update might mean. Like, what do they need from a TSP update? Ours could be good as is. It could be that we need to do a major revamp. I think that that's a little bit out of scope from what this necessarily has.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about that.
I guess my question was more about I think if we get a new TSP, it's very likely that we'll have more pedestrian and bike needs, perhaps. Maybe that's just my opinion. But if that is kind of the feeling of people, I don't know. Maybe this is a realistic amount of money to ask for. I guess I'm kind of questioning whether if there's a TSP update and we're going to get bigger numbers, we should ask for bigger money. But if this is realistic, which, I mean, $3 to $4 million would be awesome. So I'm really happy to go along with it. Just thinking about the next 12 years and how much money we might need.
Yeah, thanks for your comment. I think that is relevant, and this bond measure will probably be for another either 4 or 5 years, and it may take a while to update the TSP, and it might be relevant to the future to have another letter modifying it for future bond measures.
Yeah, so if Rob's going to speak to us in February, maybe there would be more information available by then. Josh?
Yeah, just a clarification question. The TSP, the projects in the TSP rather, are intended for future growth or to sort of meet future need or projected future need, whereas the pavement bond measure in the past has been about maintaining existing infrastructure. And then we've used that to sort of address future need on those facilities. Are we in this letter asking to sort of shift what we intend to do with this funding source?
I'll try to take that one on. I think that the bond measure has tried to achieve two different things. It has been branded as a street repair bond measure, but it's also had this component of funding active transportation. And that's somewhat of a political choice because perhaps voters might want, at least especially back 15 years ago when it was first proposed, really wanted to fill the potholes and get better streets. As you might notice by the title of this proposal, it's called a street improvement bond measure for 2022, not a road repair or street repair bond measure. And I think that that's an important but subtle distinction.
Can you say that again, Alan, as I was trying to type that up? You said that the new bond measure is going to be called a street improvement bond measure, not...
That is what the title of this proposal is a street improvement bond measure rather than a street repair bond measure. And the distinction being that it's not just about repair. In fact, it's more than about streets. So even this title that we've given it is maybe not really fully representative of what it's encompassing. If there's a better title for it or approach, I think we ought to consider that, but it might be the best we can do.
Yeah, just calling on myself, I'm thinking we would want to use something other than improvement, because I think in transportation lingo, improvement means building new, which the street repair measure always intentionally did not expand, did not build new stuff. So I think something, I guess I would direct your attention to the parenthetical remark at the bottom, or the asterisk mark at the bottom, that repairing to me means bringing it up to current needs. So if a street was built for a different reality, then we ought to repair it to the current reality, I guess would be my take on it.
I think that is, that's ultimately something that City Council will be considering about how to frame this, and perhaps legal staff as well when it gets put on the actual ballot. So I'm not sure that it's super important that we get the wording just right at this point, but maybe it is.
And I guess I'll just call on myself again. So Alan, what is your thought on where does this letter go? What, at this point, does it go to City Council from us? Does it go to the Street Repair Review Panel? What happens to it? And yeah.
Right. So what I'm suggesting is that this goes to city staff that are involved with the upcoming bond measure, and I believe there's a group of city staff of transportation planning and engineering and so forth that are sort of the leadership team. So Shane, maybe you can tell us the title of that working group. That seems like the appropriate group to send it to. I do think that having members of the communications subcommittee or the ATC in general on their own time testifying in front of city council saying we're members of this group and you're going to see this in some way, shape, and form in the future, and we want to alert you of this and we advocate for this. I think that would be very appropriate as well.
Yeah, and generally these letters go to the staff that you advise, who is our team, and then our team then distributes it to whoever is appropriate. And so in this case, that's the transportation policy team, and they're the ones who are, like you said, public works, engineering, operations, staff, and leadership who are on that and creating that. So we would forward this letter on to them, and so Rob will, in fact, next month, share more information. But I think having this letter is, will help inform, what he presents on, and then, what he hears back from you in February will also help inform that when he works with the transportation policy team.
Great. I've got a couple more small things to mention about the proposal. One is that I wanted to make a small friendly amendment to the wording in number 1. I think it would be a little more clear if the first few words said the allocation of bond measure funds should reflect city council policies, triple active transportation, not just the bond measure, but the funds, because that's what we're really focused on here. And then I just wanted to touch in number 2 that was also updated or modified by the communications subcommittee. And that reflects Reed's comments at the last meeting where he discussed that one of the problems in his opinion is that the scoping or the analysis of what would be considered in a project didn't always happen early on and wasn't as comprehensive. So this reflects more of what he said rather than what was written before, which was about the right of way itself or being curb to curb. So those are the 2 modifications.
So just for clarification, are you just pointing out that number 2 has been modified, or are you proposing a change in number 2 as it's written here?
I'm actually both. 1 and 2 have been modified since the last time that the ATC has had a chance to examine this. And since then, I am suggesting that the wording in number 1 be slightly changed from what you see to be a little more clear. So if you want me to restate that for clarification, I can do that.
I'm waiting to see if Shane can make it happen.
Probably not if it's a PDF.
Okay. So at this point, I guess
I will.
if no one has other comments, does someone want to move for the approval of this letter, or?
I will move approval of this letter with Alan's changes and thank everyone who put effort into putting this together.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so moved by Andrew, second by Anne.
Can I get a clarification in the discussion portion on what was the change in the one that you were proposing?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat there. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay, great. Too many windows to look at.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your thumb. And in this screen, it's hard to see everybody's thumb, but it looks like, Josh, your thumb is off the screen, but I think it's up.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's unanimous.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty, thank you. So the next, look at this, we're ahead of schedule, by God. So the next item on the agenda, as Shane types feverishly, is his presentation on the Active Transportation Summit.
Yeah, and this one does have a lot more time than we need actually too. So this could be a rarity of a meeting where we finish a little bit early. But I did want to give an update on this. And so let me just close down a couple things here and open something else up. This is, I've shared some of this before, but I have had some meetings and some plans coming together around this. So I just wanted to give an update and also really engage you all in what we want to see with this Active Transportation Summit. Let me get this. So as I've mentioned before, I do want to plan an Active Transportation Summit for this year, sooner rather than later, actually coming up in March, potentially the first week of April, but really aiming for March ideally. And the idea is that we're going to be getting together professionals and advocates who are directly working on some sort of committee or organization. It isn't necessarily a broad community summit like we've done in the past, but really the people who are working on this as part of their profession or professional advocacy work. And so that definitely includes ATC, BPAC, BEST board members, people who are engaged at sort of that level. We have had these summits in the past that have been community oriented. We had one that was Oregon Bike Summit many years ago that was for the region, but then other ones have been focused on just Eugene. And our idea with this one is to have one that is a little bit more regionally focused, mostly because our regional transportation options work has really shifted from point-to-point solutions in LTD to LCOG. And we also have a lot of other regional work that's happening with Safe Routes to School and Cascadia Mobility, who is currently focused in Eugene, but would like to expand into micromobility service to Springfield. And they definitely have a broader perspective beyond just Eugene and their nonprofit work in general. And so the idea is to gather all of these organizations together, and including members of ATC and BPAC and other community partners. And the idea is to have an in-person networking and team building space, as was Grace mentioned earlier. Not having that ability to get together in person definitely affects the way that we're working together. And I think we've been able to pull off these virtual ATC meetings but I think we all know that having that in-person connection when we can. And my hope is that by planning this for March and April, if you look at, I was just looking at some of the COVID numbers and sort of the projections coming out, and it does look like in March sometime, hopefully we will be on that downward end and flattening out at the low end. Of course, there could be other variants or other things, but I still want to make this plan in the hopes that we can actually get together in person. So, and a piece of this will be a little bit of a virtual thing beforehand to kind of get everyone together and have that sort of ice breaking, understand who's coming to the Active Transportation Summit, and then get together in person somewhere on campus or a school facility, someplace where we can gather a large number of folks. Probably, about 50 is sort of the number we're thinking right now. We are creating an organizing committee with LCOG and Safe Routes to School and city staff. And I do want to request that there's one or two people from the ATC, and that could be your chairs. It could be someone from a committee. I'd like to figure that out tonight, who would like to volunteer or you would like to appoint to the organizing committee. We probably will only meet a couple times. It's mostly just to bounce ideas and make sure that we're covering the right things in our planning for what this is. And we are planning to have, it is going to be an all-day event, and that it'll be a weekday event since it's mostly people who are in the industry and working, but we are planning to do a special, likely a lunchtime thing and a late afternoon evening piece where people who are working other jobs can engage in the summit in some way, and some of that might be virtual, and then like a virtual lunch piece, and then sort of hybrid, and then also something in the evening where people can come in person and sort of hear what's been discussed and add their input and thoughts into that as well. And then I do want to highlight that this is also an opportunity for us to talk about sort of plans for Oregon 22. There's a lot of active transportation pieces that are wrapped up in Oregon 22, including the Riverfront Festival and all these other events that are going to be impacted transportation-wise. And this will be an opportunity for us to, by March, we'll have a really good grasp. We have a transportation committee meeting, or transportation committee that is meeting throughout the next few months, and some working groups, and we should have some more information about the real sort of on the ground logistical pieces. I'll have a little bit of an update for you in February, the February meeting, about some of that as well. So that's pretty much all I wanted to share on that front. But then I wanted to get some feedback from you all. I guess really quick, one more piece I wanted to share. If I can find it here in my notes, was on that sort of the goals of it. This idea of what we want to get out of it. We have, some ideas and brainstorms that I put up there about not only providing in-person networking and team building space, but creating this SWOT analysis of what's happening locally, what are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats around being able to achieve our active transportation goals, and then discussing those ideas, making plans, and creating action items. Both LCOG and the City of Eugene see this as a kicking off point for really diving into our strategic plan pieces around active transportation. Part of the regional transportation plan, the RTP, one of the things that became really clear in that process for LCOG was their need to have an active transportation plan. And they want to utilize this sort of gathering as a kickoff for them as well. So I'll leave it at that and then gather any input you have.
Any thoughts? Yeah, Alan?
Yeah, Shane, do you anticipate this being on a weekday or on a weekend?
It'd be a weekday.
Yeah, because it's mostly.
It's mostly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Julie?
I know you said this is mostly sort of, insider professionals, but is there any value in invited some of our elected officials to, when I heard the SWOT analysis, I thought, boy, it'd be really, really helpful if they heard what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Because, there's a lot of weaknesses and threats for having active transportation. A car culture that is so pervasive is a tough thing to change, and it would be, I don't know if there's any value in that or whether it's even feasible, but just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I'm happy to discuss that a little bit more and see if the organizing committee, the folks involved in putting it together, but what do other ATC members think? What will you find valuable in this gathering of professionals that also have, you as ATC members and BPAC and those working on this, even beyond elected officials, like what are some other ideas? What are things that you think might be helpful? And also who's interested in volunteering for the few organizing committee meetings or more outside work?
Yeah, Mary?
I don't know if you mentioned, Shane, is it going to be like professionally facilitated or how is that?
Yeah, good question. Yes, we are planning to have a facilitator, an outside professional facilitator.
And also, I guess I just have a wonder about, I guess it's sort of by invitation only, and maybe those things are happening. That kind of thing happens and it's fine. I just think about sort of, is it sort of exclusive then? I think it'd be hard to figure out where to cut it off. I'm sure you've given some thought to that, but I would imagine that there'd be some people thinking, hey, why am I not involved? And I understand you have to cut it off somewhere. So
yeah, we talked a bit about that at the last meeting that we had, and it's something we were aware of, just thinking about whose voices are heard. And I think that we also, that we're going to have some sort of registration piece. So we do that, it is a bit of, we want to keep our numbers, small enough that it was very intentional to not have a community event. One, just because we're not ready for large community events quite yet. And so we don't want to get it big in that sense. But then also that we as professionals haven't had an opportunity to get together. And so early discussions were of having just professionals, but to me, it really felt important to have ATC and BPAC and some best board members that might not be professionals and that they get paid for it, but they're professionals in the amount of time and energy and passion that is involved in the work. And that definitely all applies to you all, just by being members of this. And so I think setting it up in that sense for now makes sense for us as far as that sort of exclusivity of this particular summit, with the understanding that we do need to make sure that we're also hearing these other voices. And for those pieces of, when it actually comes time to create a plan, that we need to have those equity lenses on there and making sure that we're working with the equity panel and, ways that we can engage to make sure we're hearing those voices as well. Just that these voices are those who are actually doing the work currently. And like, we know what the landscape is. And so there's sort of this advanced class piece of this. That makes sense?
Andrew?
One suggestion on the elected official piece, when we did the Transit Tomorrow design workshops, which are the analogous to this, right? We had all the professionals in a room and some advocates. Rob Zako was there from Best, right? Doing the kind of transit network design stuff that might not be appropriate for the wide audience, but we actually got really good attendance from elected officials at like a 1 hour thing at the end of the day where it was all reported back, and it wasn't, they got to feel the energy and got to be a part of it, and maybe provide some like early feedback or something like that. But it's also, I think, easier if we're like, hey, we want the mayor and the city manager and the mayor of Springfield to get like an hour of their time rather than, come talk about bikes and walking for 8 hours. I mean, I think they should, but let's be maybe respectful and realistic about their other commitments too.
I like that idea a lot. And especially with the knowledge of how it was done before, I'd love to hear more about that one, but it's great.
Yeah, Alan?
I think getting professionals in our local region together has a lot of value, but sometimes I think that communities can be kind of insular, and I think there's an opportunity to get both inspiration and ideas from other communities. And I don't have anything specific in mind right now, but there may be some opportunities about way agencies have worked together well in other communities that could serve as a model for Eugene and Springfield and beyond, and specifically related to their active transportation committees or other public engagement to further their active transportation goals.
Yeah, Julie?
Sort of along those lines of having it not just be professionals, it occurs to me that organizations like 350 do have a transportation committee with people that, people that are interested in that, and their chairs or the chair might be really helpful, because one of the difficulties I've had when I've been discussing things with 350 is there's a real, there's oftentimes, a lack of understanding of how it works, which is true for most of us when we joined this committee, was that until you really start to understand the challenging process of transportation planning, it's, just we want more biking doesn't really cut it, so it could be really a learning experience to consider some of those kinds of more grassroots, not a huge amount, but just so that there's some understanding of a better mix of really what it takes to have the sort of the rulemaking, planning side, the official side, and then the passion piece, which is people like us and, people like the chairs of 350. So just consider that.
I think that's a great suggestion, and that also reminded me that there are some neighborhood associations that have transportation committees on them, and so I'll add them to the potentials to consider in our pool.
Any thoughts, especially those several of you haven't heard much from? Any, Josh, Andrea, and anything that hasn't been said yet?
Either me or my organization is going to get invited to this, and so I didn't want to stick my oar in. because I think unlike some other people on this committee, I'll get a chance to participate and at least at a remove. And I think that also highlights someone here should volunteer to be on the organizing committee, because you can bring these points up again. And as Shane noted, the commitment is very light. So that's my thoughts.
I was actually looking at the other Josh, but your input is welcome too. Yeah, Andy?
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I think it's great, and I think that I love the idea of us having more cross-pollination among all these organizations. And as we talked a little bit about this in our programs meeting, and also, I mean, our charter, our bylaws, will allow us to have some members from other organizations. So it might be something to explore, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, I guess I'd be willing to try to help with the planning if we don't have other volunteers. I am going to be out of town for a last week in February, which might be kind of a key time, but if other people want to jump on board, please do.
Can I get a pulse from people too? I know that spring break is that week of the 19th to whatever, 26th or so. And
Of March.
I know of March, yeah, March 19th, I think, is the beginning of U of O spring break. And so, for my kids' school, at least the next week is their second spring break. And so I'm curious sort of how that first week of April versus the week before spring break feels for people.
I'm retired. I got no viewpoint. Any thoughts on that?
I'm childless, so I have no viewpoint.
Yeah, I wouldn't be around end of March, I think, but that the very last week that is the beginning of April, I will be. So.
And I'm seeing some comments now. I'll make note of those. I do have, we do have sort of this extended pool that we're talking about, bike industry and shops. I think Shift Community Cycles definitely fits in this other area of sort of nonprofit advocate and shop. But yeah, so I have them down the list. So thanks for that one. And Sustainability Commission, I think that's another good point, Sue, to think about them. So I'll add that to the potentials list. And then Julie Daniels has offered to potentially be Atc Planning Liaison on this. More info needed. So we can talk about that if Sue and Julie are interested. That'd be great. We can talk offline.
I guess I'm assuming Safe Routes, it would be on your list as well.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think Sarah is will be on the organizing committee to help pull it all off.
Was there anyone else who was interested in being on the planning committee besides those two? Just want to make sure other people might have some passion in this area.
We got new members coming on. We could draft them.
We'll definitely loop them in for the event.
I think it might be a good way for folks to jump right in.
Yeah, it'll give them a good perspective of what we're doing and what's happening in our region. Okay, well, I think that's all that I have for you tonight on this topic. And I'm excited to work with you all to make this happen and to get together in person to work on some exciting things. I'll hand it back to you, Sue.
Okay, so that brings us to subcommittee reports. It's been the holidays. I don't know how active the subcommittees have been, but open to hearing from the committees.
I don't think there's any updates from the infrastructure committee. We've been on a bit of a hiatus from the holidays, and I know Josh was our sole representative the other night. So
No business of note was transacted.
I'm glad you didn't solve all the problems without the rest of us, Josh.
Okay,
And the communications subcommittee met, and our focus was on the letter related to the bond measure. So you already got the lowdown on that.
and Mary?
The programs committee met, and Andrea and I worked a little bit more with Sarah Mazie on the walking school bus, and we are going forward with that, supporting her on that. And it's going to be after spring break, probably at Cesar Chavez School. And we're meeting with Sarah, Andrea and I are, to walk the route and figure out how much time it will take. McCormick may be added to it depending on how many volunteers they get. And we're going to be, Sarah's drafting a letter to send out to potential possible volunteers to explain it and solicit some volunteers. And so we're going to be helping with the volunteer solicitations as well. So hopefully some of you will be able to help out a little bit. So it'll be mostly a morning shift, and it'll probably be less than an hour, depending on how long it takes you to get there and get home again. And we don't know the days yet, but we'll have more information about that. And then we also talked some about the Oregon 22, the World Track Meet. And I think we made a decision that our two areas to be involved would be, we'd like to help recruit volunteers. I think Sue made the point that it'd be good if we could get good at recruiting people and connecting with people. And so this would be good practice for us to stretch our muscle in that area. He's so cute. And then the second thing is, I think Andrew came up with the idea of, because we thought, oh, what can we do to be involved with the world? The Oregon 22, it's such a cool thing. But we realized that we were such a small little, so small considering the huge scope of this thing. And so Andrew's idea was that we come up with we review what the active transportation plans are in place for this event, and that we come up with some suggestions and recommendations based on what their plans already are. So we'll be reviewing that. We'll get the plans from Shane and give some feedback to that.
Okay, thanks, Mary. So that brings us to information share and project updates.
Can I jump in on a related piece to what Mary was just talking about? Just because these Oregon 22 meetings are happening next week, and we have a lot more work to do and more things to share. But there is one piece that came up. It's something that's been discussed in the past, and I think it's going to be a key piece for sort of the active transportation network for the event. And so I just want to share this and gather your thoughts and input on it, since we have the time this evening. And so there's a lot more discussion to happen at the higher level with the city, but I did speak with Chris Henry about this, and it's something that's been tossed around. And so, Josh, I know that there's more that Dave and you and I need to talk about around the university. But one of the key pieces that I've highlighted in the past is this need to connect from Hayward Field down Agate to the riverfront path. As you know, there's the event at Hayward Field. There's also the marathon that will be happening at Autzen Stadium. And then there's the Riverfront Festival that will be happening down at the former eWeb space. And so the connection to this shared use path is going to be really important. And we are looking at the potential of closing down this northbound lane of Agate, a lane of northbound Agate for active transportation use. And so when you look at the street view of this, there are currently 3 lanes. I got turned around here that go out to Franklin. So the idea would be to close this lane down for active transportation. There's a wide sidewalk here, so really it would be the idea is to put in a 2-way protected bikeway along this corridor. And as well, once you get across here, this would also be closed, which is the exit for a parking garage that is down here, or an entrance for it. And so we would have to reroute how traffic accesses that parking garage. And so that's the key piece to see if we can do, because on the other side of Franklin, we know that we can, that this will be over capacity because we have 3 lanes and a bike lane for an area of roadway that will be closed to most motor vehicles, except for shuttles, which will be accessing 13th in that area. So just to give you that overview again, most shuttles will be coming in on 13th here, dropping people off to go to Hayward Field, and then they will be traveling up out of here and turning left, and some of them potentially right. So there will be a right turn conflict that we're going to have to deal with. It could be that we end up having to have flaggers for this section, but it's something we're looking at. This is where the parking garage is. So we would have to have access through this way and then exit the normal way. That's the tricky part, is seeing if we can do that. But it's just something I want to throw out there. I think it's going to be a key piece if we want families and all types of active transportation users to feel comfortable coming and going from the Riverbank path to this facility, to the event. This is, I think, one way that we can do that. How we transition people at this intersection and how we get them through here to the valet bike parking and other areas is still TBD, but that's one piece that has kind of come up recently that since we have some time, I'd love to hear your feedback. I know Josh is itching too.
We'll definitely have to talk about it. Like, I like the general idea, but when we had move-in this year, we blocked Franklin Boulevard like to I-5 for like 5 hours, which made people really upset. So I am super uncomfortable with like mucking with the traffic pattern there. I am sure we can figure it out, but that's all I'm gonna say now.
Yeah, I would just say that when there have been big track meets in the past, and this is much bigger, it's kind of a lousy place to try to ride your bike. I mean, you're like a, flow going against the flow. It's pretty cumbersome to try to ride your bike through that many pedestrians. So I'm not sure there will be as much bike traffic as you're anticipating. I also don't know how many. I mean, it's going to be mostly locals who would be riding their bikes. I mean, the people from around the rest of the world generally won't have bikes, and so I'm not sure how much even bike valet parking. Yeah, because I don't know how many locals. Those tickets are pretty expensive. I don't know how many locals can snag tickets and actually be going to the event. So it's hard for me to have a feel for what the need would be. Yeah, I don't know who was next, Josh.
What about changing the timing on Onyx instead? Sort of routing people through campus and then giving sort of cyclists a larger window to cross Franklin there without, mucking around with the traffic on Agate.
Yeah, I think timing and major wayfinding. I think, for those in the know, Onyx is great. If you don't know, it's very hidden.
Andrew?
Just maybe there could be signs or something like this, or it's really just a block down if you go down 13th.
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about in the committee was kind of like, how do you activate the whole route? Because it's about a mile to get to the Riverfront Park, which isn't, it's not terribly long, but that is a decent walk. So if anybody has ideas on that, that'd be awesome. I just think about the scale of like how many people are going to be there, and it's going to be a lot. So, I mean, the university just doesn't have parking, right? Like that's, and you don't want 20,000 cars trying to go to the event, even if we had the parking. So I don't know, get creative, but I would love to hear if anybody has ideas about kind of how you activate that space north of Agate and then kind of along the new riverfront path. That's wonderful. Thank you, city staff, for getting that done. That way it can kind of be festival atmosphere the whole way.
Yeah, Mary?
Well, I don't know, this probably can't be done, but it seems like it'd be really cool if it could be advertised as a bike friendly event, somehow. I don't know how that advertising works, how you get the word out to people to bring your bike, because it is going to be hard to get around in a car. And if people know that there's bike access, then maybe they'll bring them.
Yeah, Andrew? Josh, I'm assuming your hand is still up, or are you?
Oh, sorry, I'll take it down. Sorry.
Okay, Andrew?
Yeah, I keep thinking in my brain, this is what I see, is like having a really dedicated path that maybe, we didn't do this for, I know Josh is going to cringe, but we didn't do this for parking day, but doing some sort of semi-permanent kind of paint on the, on the path, like to really guide people instead of just like having, and that would perhaps be a way to get people to go to Onyx, as Josh suggested. And the other thing too, Sue actually talked about how it's a mile of walking, and it would be kind of cool to have a way to sort of engage people. And Andrew was just mentioning that, and I kept thinking, I mean, what would be cool is like maybe to have a couple stages along the way, that sort of, if the city could figure this out. I mean, it's a lot to organize, but I mean, to have people perform or do different kinds of things on the stages, dancing or something in between, so that people are sort of activated by the whole walk.
Yeah, Anne?
And I don't know, I'm just thinking back to, pre-COVID era, or when we had open streets events, et cetera. And I feel like those themselves felt really engaged. I don't necessarily know if it needs to be reinventing the wheel, but if there's some way to combine that type of programming along this stretch. And then if theme of the wayfinding, I think regardless of the route, that's what I was mentioning, Chalk, is thinking about pavement marking using chalk, because it doesn't really rain in July. So you could do it in advance, and you could either do fun things like, I mean, I've seen some really cool intersection treatments you could do. I mean, that'd probably be hard to put chalk down across the intersection when everything's moving, but in the lane, or, if you have bollards up anywhere with, putting some like little posts up with streamers or something to make it extra visible too, to just catch people's eye. And thinking about people using it, if it could be combined, if maybe people are bringing their own bikes, maybe they're using the bike share or e-scooters like Shane mentioned, but if it could also be like an event for the community, even if they aren't attending it, to make it an active, cool space, like an open streets event that other people could also come as a destination from around the community.
Yeah, Julie?
Just thinking about Josh's problem with move-in day and how backing up traffic. It seems like, I mean, this is a regional, this is a national event that's happening in our region. It seems that ODOT can do some signage on I-5 so that people do not try to use Franklin Boulevard, because there are many ways to get from Springfield to Eugene and from Eugene to Springfield without using Franklin Boulevard. And so just besides local, besides just local signage and boards and things, is, large event, go someplace else. I mean, which is not possible maybe for the U of O or MOOC. Well, you do a little bit of that, but I think there could be more of that to, alert people that your car is going to have a hard time. This is a people and bike event.
Josh?
Yeah, I don't want to give the impression that this isn't doable, but some people saw my face when Shane started mentioning it, and that was what it was bringing up, was like, I don't want us to welcome the world to Eugene and then completely shut down Eugene, which it affected MX as well. It's not like it was just cars that had issues with that. So I absolutely do think we can find a way to make this an awesome ped and bike event, because it will have to be, because we don't have enough parking. So.
Yes. Yeah, these are all really great. I'm really glad that, and I want to inspire you to keep going with these ideas. One thing I'll note is that I think the ODOT piece is good, and utilizing what we're gathering for where the park and ride lots are for shuttles, and then also recognizing that Austin Stadium might not even be a park and ride lot, because the M's will be holding some games during that time, and it could just be too much. And so we're actually looking at that as a potential park and stride lot, where you actually park there and then walk, because it's not that far from Autzen to Hayward, right? And so if we could engage that space, we can also really funnel people to the park and stride, and then have a fun space that they walk through to get to Hayward. I think there's some really great potential. And like, as they're walking across the bridge, they could also, hear or see or feel or learn about the event that's happening at the Riverfront Festival as well. So they can sort of like, oh, I can go right and do this, or, go to Hayward. So, with these two events happening, I think that there's a lot of sort of energy that could be happening there. And so I think those are some great ideas. I know we've done some breakfast at the bike bridges at that space as well, that sort of junction. And that could be a fun sort of in-between space.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just to give people a sense of how big this thing is. According to the guy from Travel Lane County who was talking to a meeting that Gears had, apparently all of the local hotels are taken up just with press for the event, just for the media. And every hotel in Salem is full. Every hotel in Albany is full. This is big. And also the other thing that he said, and I hope this isn't true, but I think he said that the Lane County Fair is going to be going on that same week.
That is true. Lane County Fair, they were approached to see if they might change that, and they decided that was a crazy idea. And so the fair will be going on. There will be likely some Cuthbert concerts happening, which, I think some of that is really great, that there would be some other things where Eugene can really highlight fun things that are going on. But yes, it's going to definitely be very interesting.
Yeah, Mary?
Well, I'm going to say again that I think that, the share bikes are cool, but 300 bikes is like nothing compared to what I'm imagining these crowds are. So I guess I think it's really cool to make space for active transportation, but if there's not enough active transportation, then that's going to be a bust. Like, why did they use that lane for active transportation? So I just have some trepidation about that, that's all I'll say, because I don't know how to impact that, but I worry that we're not really going to have the bikes come out.
Yeah, I think Anne highlighted that we could potentially get more e-scooters. That's definitely something that we've already talked to the vendors about. And we do have 200 other e-bike or other bikes, not e-bikes, but bike share bikes that Cascadia Mobility has, and they're looking at ways to potentially use those with another city, or it could be something that we temporarily use to supplement our fleet. And 300 bikes in a dense area of sort of where we expect most trips to be happening in that area, they are bike share bikes. They're not like 300 people use these bikes. It's thousands of people use these bikes in one day.
Okay, any more thoughts, ideas? You got an extra bedroom, get it in shape, you got a killing. Yeah.
Great, thanks for that extra time of something that wasn't officially on the agenda, but was something we talked a bit about at the subcommittee, and I'm glad to get even more great ideas and energy around it.
Okay, any other project updates, info share? Yeah, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm really excited because just want to share with everyone, moving ahead, had some big meetings right before the holidays where our subcommittees were making recommendations about what City Council and LTD's board should select, right? And you might remember moving ahead, it's 5 corridors, looking at different types of investment for people walking, biking, and taking the bus. So some potentially really big changes in the future, and we've been moving slowly towards that for a long time, and we're going to continue to move slowly towards it, but it's a big step for us. We are on the calendar to have a joint session between LTD's board and Eugene City Council to kind of give them those recommendations and allow them to deliberate on February 28th. And I think tentatively on City Council's calendar for a decision March 14th and LTD's board March 16th. And that kind of sets us up to really start doing the detailed planning work and trying to get funding and all those really hard pieces. But this is a big step, and I'm really excited that we are making progress on that project. And I thought all of you would be interested in that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Mary?
Sue and I have talked about having some small group discussions between now and our February meeting. So we're going to be sending out some discussion questions to all of you and to the new ATC members. And we would like to meet with small groups, like maybe 3 people, a combination of people, hopefully, and Sue and or I. And we would just discuss, what's our vision for ATC, what's working, what's not. Some of the things we've maybe touched on before, but not in a small group. So it's a chance to hear more voices and maybe have more interaction and conversation. And so we want to talk about how we want to organize, what we want to accomplish, what's possible. And so you'll be hearing from us and asking you to sign up for any dates that might work for you, and then we'll organize it from there, and we'll give you a list of the discussion questions to ponder beforehand. So.
Okay, anybody else? All righty. Yes.
I have a little bit more, but I want to give other people opportunities to. No, okay.
Well, I would reiterate, please. Yeah, Mary and I are really kind of excited about hearing your guys' ideas. So please do let us know when you can meet and put your thinking caps on. We'd like to hear what you want us to do.
As far as project updates on my end, I mentioned scooters a couple times. We do have the administrative rule in with the city attorney's office. We have 2 preferred vendors that we're working to communicate with on whatever our process is going to be, which is still, we're refining that of how we're going to create the license process so that we can decide on one operator. We are looking to operate for the trial period, one operator. And so there's a little bit more to do on our administrative rule side, and then we hope to announce who will be selecting for that license so that the University of Oregon can start working with them on an agreement. So they'll go through a process with us for our license, and then need to work with the university on theirs. And I don't know if Josh wants to give any update on that university side at all.
Not really.
Okay.
We're going to participate in the pilot. Certainly, there's a lot of concerns on campus, just given the density of activity that occurs. So we're going to be very deliberative about the way we put things in.
Yep. Yeah. And we're excited to have the university as partners in the pilot. And I'm excited to have that keep moving. Just the more work I do, on Oregon 22 and, working on micromobility, I think it's important that the city try this out and really pilot this project and see how it could potentially help us in reaching our goals around climate and climate energy actions that we have, as well as transportation system plan goals. So let's see, I'm going to put a link in the chat just as a reminder of general community projects. If there's specific projects people want some information on, we will hopefully have some information in upcoming meetings about projects that are more in the design phase coming up, and sort of we'll work with Mary and Sue to set an agenda of which projects might be coming to you in the next several months that will be in the design phase for build in 2023. What's on this current project list that I sent a link to are, excuse me one second. Excuse me. Projects that you've already given input in on and that we're building this summer. Didn't have my water handy here. Let's see, and then I have one other piece, scooters, Oregon 22. Oh, I will mention that we are hiring 3 positions for the City of Eugene Public Works Engineering Transportation Planning Team, an associate planner, 2 of those positions. One of them is an active transportation planner. This was formerly Lee Shoemaker's bicycle pedestrian coordinator position, but revamped from what it was into a real planner position. And so this active transportation planner will work directly with Reed as an assistant associate planner to help us move some infrastructure projects through, hopefully a little bit faster and just a bit more projects. So I'm really excited about that position. We also have an assistant associate planner that will be focused on grants and corridor planning. So working on the moving ahead pieces, the Franklin project, potential future grants with the large federal funding that's coming down the pipe. We want to be ready to be applying for those projects that the other planner will actually be working to implement with Reed. And then finally, a transportation options program coordinator. This will be someone who works with Cass and I, really an on-the-ground program implementation person. It's a limited duration, 12-month position, sort of previously what our Smart Trips coordinator was. We are looking to do a Smart Trips Lite this year to kind of get us refreshed on the work that we have done. And then, of course, Oregon 22 is going to take up a lot of staff time to be the effective active transportation push that we want to do. We have some exciting ideas, and this person is going to work on some of those projects as well as some other pieces. So if you know anyone in the planning or programmatic world who might be interested, encourage them to apply. Applications currently are set to close next Friday. And one other side note on a sort of personal / business is that I am working on a project to create a t-shirt banner / bunting, if you know what bunting is, banner project. Take old Eugene bike themed or active transportation themed t-shirts and turn them into a banner. So create a decoration piece potentially for our events or the Nest or just mobile, and that we can keep adding to as the years go on. I personally know I had a stack of shirts and I created my own t-shirt quilt out of them. And so I thought it'd be fun to create some decorative piece. So if you have any old t-shirts of Eugene bike events of old, please pass them on. Sue's already offered up some Bramble shirts of hers. So has any. That's all that I have.
Yeah, it just occurred to me, one other thing. There is one of those BB chats, which is it's something Mark Schlossberg and I don't remember what the other professor's name puts on it at U of O. They just meet informally. This is by Zoom with some transportation planning students. It came to mind when Shane, you might want to tune in there and see if there are any of those students are graduating and looking for work. But it's at, I don't know where my phone is. It's at 4:30, I think, tomorrow, and I can send out the link to if any, or maybe I already did. Anyway, they're sometimes interesting, sometimes waste of time, but if you got nothing to do, I encourage you to tune in. It's good for them to hear from, kind of get out of their mindset of planning in the abstract and deal with real people who need to use these facilities that they're talking about planning. Anything else? Okay, I think we're finished. Thank you all for your time and have a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.